Hey listeners, welcome to Tetsuo Tells a Story. I'm Tetsuo. So summer 2021 is coming up and I have a bunch of stories to share with everyone. But please enjoy this episode titled Triple Dose of Hmong Scary Fishing Stories. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and click on that notification button to get updates. Now,
let us begin.
Story 1. There was once a time when a lot of Hmong folks would go to this one river near Watertown, Wisconsin, right off from Highway 16. It used to be an annual fishing derby for Hmong families, their friends, and friends of friends. All in all, a big gathering for a carp grill out. Today, however, not many would venture into that part of the river anymore. There's a place set in the middle, in a big wooden area to the right, just as you pull into the area. There was a young boy who didn't lose his baby teeth yet. He was playing with his cousins and siblings. It is said that children who have yet to lose their baby teeth can see spirits and such. I guess you can say their third eye is still open. Anyways, the boy kept going into the woods and then kept playing around in the area. All morning, he played while the moms and the women were grilling food, and the guys were fishing. Suddenly, the boy was gone, nowhere to be seen. After a while of searching, the boy was found to be deceased in the woods, in a praying position. It was also noted that the boy was drained of his blood as well. Later on, a Hmong shaman was brought to the area, and he mentioned that it was a ja, or a water dragon, that lured the young boy into the woods and took his soul. Years later, some of the kids who played with that boy, now much older, told stories of how they would see a dark, shadowy figure come out of the woods and then disappear. Some even said that it had fangs or something to that effect. Some adults even mentioned seeing a shadowy figure in the corner of their eyes. You know, as I'm writing this, I'm getting goosebumps, because this was a place that I used to frequent. Since that death, no Hmong family has ever gone back to the area to go fishing or to picnic. I didn't go to that boy's funeral, but those that went, they said that his body looked much different than a normal dead body would look like. How different? I didn't ask. I was only 12 or 13 at the time. Story 2. I can't remember the exact date, but it was the summer of 2014, where me and a few of my friends decided to go camping at Devil's Lake right by Baraboo, Wisconsin. This was not my first trip to Devil's Lake, but it was my first time camping. We only camped one night, and that night's weather was not in our favor. We went into the tent right before the sunset because it was very windy, and it also started to rain. We were playing card games, drinking, and most importantly, telling ghost stories. We shared stories about people giving food offerings to the spirits when they went out camping. We then contemplated on if we should or shouldn't give an offering to the spirits that night. But we decided not to mess around with it because we didn't know what we were doing. One of my friends started telling a story about not urinating on tree stumps because there may be spirits around. After drinking a few beers, I had to go relieve myself, remember the superstition about peeing on trees. I didn't really care about the consequences or the superstition, so I went ahead and relieved myself. As the game and drinking slowed down, we went to bed after a long night of scary stories. The next day was beautiful. It was bright and sunny. We decided to rent 2 rowboats and went rowing. We spent approximately 2 hours as some of us were fishing. After a long day, we came back to site and started packing everything. A lot of us understood that when we're going home from a foreign place, such as a campsite, we should call back the soul to come home. I understood that I should have called my soul back to come home with me, but I just kept it to myself and said nothing. A couple of days later, I dreamed the scariest dream of my life. I relived the camping trip, but with a dark twist to it. In my dream, I went camping, not with my friends, but my family. We went on a crazy adventure, but we kept going, and I kept falling behind everyone. I kept falling further and further. The whole dream's a blur now, but not the very ending of it. My family had entered a cabin, and I followed them down the stairs to the basement, which was old and had a lot of spider webs. It felt like an eternity finding my way out of the cabin, and once I came out, it was bright and sunny. I could see the last of my family members walking to their cars and driving off. I was at the cabin alone, with the sidewalk splitting from where I stood, making a huge square path, leaving the center, a big field of grass. I started walking towards the left path, but there was a small black individual walking towards me. So I turned and started walking towards the right path. Another figure started walking up. So I decided to walk down the middle of the grass field. Again, a third figure. I tried changing directions, but at this point, all three figures had blocked my way. Crazy thing is, I could see them all very clearly. All figures were dark, shadowy, with a blue-toned skin, which I would probably call a bonsong or da, female spirit or entity. The one who blocked my right path was a young boy about the age of 11, poor clothing, half naked, short stubby short hair, and no facial features. The figure in the middle was about the same size, but with much longer hair, and on top of her eyebrows were two very dark, circular marks. The last figure was a much taller girl, with very long hair covering most of her face. None of them were taller than me, and as I fought my way through them, they grabbed a hold of me and insisted that I go with them. As I saw the last of the cars leaving, I started to cry out asking for help and tell them I didn't want to go with them. Then, I woke up. I went on not telling anyone about my dream for 2 weeks. Within the 2 weeks, I had lights on whenever I went, and I slept with my lights on and closed all the closets whenever I went into my house. I did this because anything that was dark gave me the creeps, like something was there watching me, even if there were people around the corner of my eyes. Just meeting those dark spots gave me chills, and all I could see were the three little figures. I know this is stupid, but during that time, two of my friends decided that we should go to one of their houses and to drink. I live in town and I was in school. I had an apartment on campus. The apartment was cleaned out and there was nothing in there because the lease was ending. After drinking, instead of having my friend drop me off at home, I insisted to be dropped off at my apartment that night. And remember, that apartment had nothing, no bed, no blanket, just the floor. Because I thought it was a smart idea to wake up the next morning and walk down 1 block to drop off the keys to the landlord. That night, as I slept on the ground, buzzed from drinking, and curling myself in the corner where my bed used to be, I did not sleep well. I kept hearing whispers, and I felt like a big shadow kept stomping its feet right next to my head. Shortly after 2 weeks, I gave up. I couldn't hold it in anymore. After going to an uncle's house, I broke down when I got home. I told my mom about my anxiety, and most importantly, my dream. My uncle was a shaman, and my mom asked me why I didn't tell him anything when I was over at his house, but I was too scared to tell him anything. Later that day, my dad went to get a pair of chickens, and my uncle came over to Hupli, meaning to call back my spirit. I told him about the camping trip, the dream, and the incident in my apartment. It was a very weird Hupli. He requested that we boiled an egg in the process. He started normal chants, but then he got the gong, and after a short while, he walked outside continuing his chants for a while. when he came back and concluded his hoopli, and he asked me,
"Son, why was it so difficult to bring back your spirit?"
he almost recommended that my parents repeat the process of calling back my spirit for me, but he said that everything should be taken care of, and tied a red and white string around my wrist. He peeled the egg slowly and found a weird piece of the egg, which was a little deformed, and he stated that that part of my soul started to reincarnate. My uncle made my dad put the egg white into a little pouch and made it into a necklace. I was not to throw it away and was instructed to wear it for the next few days. My uncle explained to me that it may have started on my camping trip when we went rowing. My uncle said the day was too good and that me and my friends may have triggered a dragon ceremony, perhaps a wedding, and that they've captured my soul. To this day, I still remember the three little figures in my dream perfectly, but I've gotten over the fear for dark, shadowy places shortly after the hoopli. I'm not sure if the hoopli worked or if it was just a placebo effect, but I'm glad it worked. I've taken the string off after a year, but I still keep it with the egg white that my uncle had told me to keep. Story 3. Wisconsin has some of the best lakes and rivers for fishing. My buddies and I do an awful lot of fishing around Wausau and the surrounding areas. One of our favorite fishing trips include night fishing for catfish on the Wisconsin River. One warm night back in 2003, we planned a night fishing trip to Lake Dubay, just 30 minutes south of Wausau. We often fished by the dam. This place was known to have an abundance of huge catfish, arm and thigh size. The three of us, my cousin, nephew, and myself, decided and planned to fish for several hours on that dock. It was a very slow night. We had a few bites but no catches. I decided to walk on the boat landing, which was around 100 feet away, to fish by myself. I instructed my cousin and nephew to stay together. They were both teenagers and significantly younger than I was. As I threw my line out and waited for the fish, around 30 minutes later, my cousin came and stood right next to me. I asked him why didn't he stay with my nephew, and he said that he didn't feel secure with the fact that I was not at the dock with the both of them. Since I had no worries, I decided to stay calm and wait patiently for a bite. Several minutes later, I turned to look at my nephew at the dock, and he stood there very still, without a movement. I said to myself that he is only watching his fishing pole. About 15 minutes later, my nephew came to the both of us, his fishing pole still in his hand, and told us that we needed to leave immediately. My cousin kept asking my nephew why, but I nervously interrupted and said, and said that no one explains anything, let's just go. You grabbed all of our fishing equipment and rushed to my vehicle. As we were driving off, my nephew explains that, as he was watching his fishing pole, he saw what he thought were 3 humps out of the middle of the river. It moved towards him, and several moments later, a giant head that looked like a snake came out of the river. It stopped, looked at him, and in that moment, made him freeze, and he could not move for several minutes. I immediately told him to stop talking, and that he should wait until we are completely out of the area before he continues telling us what happened. The road back to Wausau ran along the Wisconsin River, and at one particular point in that road, we had a sharp turn, and to our right, we saw a massive scene on the lake's view. My nephew shouted out loud,
"It's right there, don't you guys see it?"
I tried my best not to look, and I drove even faster than ever to get us out of this area. For the most part, I only thought that my nephew was hallucinating, and didn't think much of it after that night. A week later, I made a poor judgment. We decided to go back to that Lake Dubay Dam, to go night fishing again. This time, it was me, an uncle, and the same nephew. My nephew was quite reluctant, and he didn't seem like he wanted to go, but he insisted that he would go again since he was my best fishing buddy, and we do all of our fishing together. This time, we decided that we would drive my car down to the boat landing and fish together right next to my car. We casted out our lines, and my nephew immediately panicked, and he yelled out,
Yandana, guys, Yandana, Nichbo. Yungol itunalo pino, itunalo. Don't you guys see that? Looks like a huge snake that's crawling our way.
My uncle was determined to see what my nephew was seeing, and he kept asking, Yatu, Duchipoline? Where is it? I don't see it. However, I wasn't ready to see anything. I quickly cut off our fishing lines and threw everything into my car. We drove off. This time, I told my nephew not to say anything until we got home. Since that second occurrence, we never went night fishing, ever, again. Thanks everyone for making it to the end of this episode. Let me know if you have a specific type of story you want to listen to. Shoot me an email if you want a story to be told. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to Tetsuo Tells a Story.
See you in the next episode.